Hello, I'm Hector from Voice, and today I'm speaking to mother, head of a talent agency, head of a local musical academy, and now an author because those things weren't already enough. It's Amanda Cosgrove. On whom? On Zoom.
Hi Hector, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
So your new book, is this something that just came about because you were trapped in your house and you just needed to share your experiences?
Oh, very close, very close. I actually came up with the idea pre-lockdown, honestly. I started to work on it before, gosh, when was that now? So 2019, Christmas 2019. Unfortunately, both my parents were very, very ill and they have since passed away. So I had a gap where I was looking after them and nothing happened. And then all of a sudden we went into lockdown and I found myself with this new amount of time, which was amazing. And I just thought, I know, I'll be one of those annoying people that writes a book. So I did. But no, it had been on the back burner for a little while.
Fantastic. After you had decided to write it, obviously being completely new to the process and everything, why did you choose this subject in particular about getting a child into drama school? What was it about that subject that made you so passionate to the extent you'd write a book about it?
It was just real life. It's what I knew. It's what I wanted to. I mean, I went through the whole experience with my son, and it really was quite daunting. There was so much research. I mean, perhaps I was over the top in what I had to look through. I don't know, but I just thought if it was daunting for me, being someone that has worked along the way in the industry, goodness knows what it must be like for parents that have nothing to do with it. And when their child says, "I want to be an actor," says, you're having a laugh. This is, they don't know anything about it. How do they support? What do they do? How do they know what questions to ask? And I just thought, well, let's just write a book. But the thing about it is it's not, as you know, it's not such a book. It's not just about sort of going to drama school. It's grab a glass of wine and let's have a giggle along the way as well. So it's very much written for the parents and not the students, because there's loads out there for the students. So yeah, different angle. It was, there was nothing there for me when I wanted it, put it that way. And hopefully now there is.
Fantastic. I have to say, I'm going to jump straight in with a question that I got from my mother when I was asking. I went, going to drama school, for a parent's perspective, my mum will have questions for this. So going straight to a question from my mum, how do you know if your child should be an actor or is just a diva? And is that in the book?
It's the first chapter.
It's the first chapter.
It's that initial conversation. I was lucky. I knew Alex was interested from about 5, shall we say. He digressed. He went to football for a while and so on, but it was always there. And I think for a parent, have they ever joined a local Amdram society? Have they taken any singing or dancing lessons? Have they shown an interest in that? What do they watch on YouTube? What sort of child have they been? Where are the interests? And if it's someone that last year wanted to be a pilot, this year wanted to be an optician, and then suddenly it's an actor, then you need to have a really good conversation and find out, do they just want to be famous? There's so many people now have got instant fame, haven't they, with all these programs on television, what's the word? Can't think of the word. The reality shows, and they get so they get famous so quickly, is what I'm trying to say. And I think, you've got to delve a little bit deeper and make sure that it is something that they've got an absolute hunger for, not just fancy it, but they've really shown a clear interest. Do you remember that? I know you're an actor yourself. Do you remember going through that?
I certainly do. Yeah, there is.
Trying to convince parents or what have you.
Well, I'll admit I fibbed a little bit there, as my mother is an actress herself, so there was always somewhat of a
So again, very lucky, because you obviously had a lot of support there. But do you know what, when you sort of ask around and talk about it, so many people don't, and a lot of students do go through this on their own. I know in my son's school there was loads of students in his class who'd gone through the process without hardly any support. So it's difficult. It's a long old process, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, this brings us quite neatly to a question I was planning on asking a little bit later on, but as we're here, you particularly focus on not having a plan B, going to drama school and applying to drama school with the full mindset of this is what you're going to do, this is only what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Dedicate all your energy to that.
Controversial, maybe.
A lot of people don't always have that. Why do you think that's important, and what effect does that have, would you say?
I think it links back to having the hunger again, and I talk about that in the book. It's, you know, how much do you really, really want to do this? And I know from a student's perspective, they're like, God, yeah, definitely, that's what I'm going to do. I'm definitely going to make it. Even if I have to audition 3 or 4 times, I'm going to do it. But for a parent, I mean, we only want what's best for the children. And part of that process for a parent is to make sure that they're okay, and that, you know, rejection's hard, isn't it? And disappointment. And I think it's just protection, that as a parent you would say, well, okay, do you know what, if you're that keen, let's go for it, we'll support you, or I'll support you, but what's your plan B? And I just think that if you're going with that mindset, that you're leaving room for a plan B, and you don't necessarily need it. I'm not saying that, you know, obviously not every student's going to get through their audition. They're not going to get into drama school. They will end up doing something else. But I think you've got to drive through. And it's those people that go back for the 10th audition and eventually get in that will succeed, because they've absolutely got the hunger and it hasn't left them. If it leaves you after 1 audition, then it wasn't for you. What do you think?
Couldn't agree more. I have to say, on a personal note, I applied many times to drama school, so I think it speaks for itself if you keep going back.
Yeah. And you know what, and I think especially a lot of parents will say, you know, because of this lockdown pandemic and so on, they've got every reason to say, whoa, hold on, the theatres were the first to close and they're the last to open, and you think we're going to find thousands and thousands to, you know, for you to take this route. I mean, of course they are, I totally get that. But when we talk about the plan B, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the drama school training, my son did musical theatre, obviously you might do straight acting and what have you, but the training in the right school is so good. I mean, you come out as such good all-rounded young men, young women, whatever, that if you're not in work as an actor, if you're teaching or you're doing something else, that's not a plan B. You've gone through all your training and you've learned all these skills, communication, how to deal with people, teamwork, confidence, and so on. To me, that's no plan B. You've had a blimmin' good training and you can turn your hands to many things. So I think it's very different. I think you've got to be realistic and say, well, okay, I might not be on stage. I might end up running my own drama school or teaching, and that's brilliant. That's no plan B.
There we go. Thinking of then going to drama school and things, when you're looking at picking it all to begin with, and I know this is touched on the book, but sort of wanted to hear more what you say in person. When you have that dazzling choice, especially if you're new to this world and know absolutely nothing about it, a sort of drama school, conservatoire, or a university, what do you pick and why?
I know. Well, let's remember this book was written for the parents, so I'm going to come straight in at cost, because I, as I say in the book again, when a student says they want to go to drama school, you know, really they mean a conservatoire. They want to be Fame. You know, you're probably too young to remember Fame, but I was very influenced by that, dancing on the tables in the canteen. That's the life they want to lead. Let's be honest. But there are so many different avenues you can take, and there are superb drama courses at some of our, you know, great universities. But yeah, it's cost. If you go to a university, you can get a full student loan. So immediately that risk and that worry and stress is alleviated to a certain extent. Anyway, obviously there's still money to pay back, but with the conservatoires, they're much higher priced, and you've got to come up with the money. Partial student loans, yes, but certainly not complete, as I'm sure you know, not the complete loans available. So it's a matter of having to save, go without, fundraise, and it is a little bit different, but my God, they're good. I think. I'm hoping that I'm not just biased, because my son that's where he ended up going, was to a conservatoire. But having seen it and been through it and seeing the money you pay for and the training you get in return, for example, the amount of contact hours. Now that's, if you go to university, you are going to live that sort of general university lifestyle, the number of hours tuition, and we all know they're on holiday more than they're in university a lot of the time, obviously now, but they do have long holidays. In conservatoires, you don't, you're having full length terms, long, difficult days. And it's a bit like being in the army or some sort of boot camp. I mean, it's hard work, isn't it? It's not all dancing on the tables in the canteen. Sometimes, I believe.
Someone's called for a flash mob.
Yeah. So there's a few different contact hours being one of them. Perhaps the amount of agents that come and see you at the end of the 3 years, presuming you're doing a 3 year, the connections to the industry, and perhaps some things that are what like who not what type of thing. I think you're possibly getting a bit better links and things like that too, but at the end of the day, as a parent, cost
of the meal. Yeah, no, I can see that being a reasonable
of course. Yeah, well, when Alex started looking, one of the ones that we went to see was university based, and it was lovely grounds. It was a great course. And even now, I mean, because we did our research and went to see their end of year shows and so on, even now they were some of the best shows that we saw in that university, and it would have been fully funded. Did I want him to go there? Yes, please. I really did, but he had his heart set on somewhere else, and he got in, so we went with it in the end. But been there as a parent, I was desperately trying to guide him down the other lane, but it was not to be.
On the subject of fundraising, in the book, you've included in the appendix quite a few resources to help with people starting off looking for funding and stuff. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I had a file, I mean, a massive bulging file. I've still got it. That's probably around me here somewhere. And I sent off hundreds and hundreds of letters applying to private funding sources, bursaries, companies, local companies, people I've never heard of, begging, basically, just saying, look, he's got in, it's one of the top schools, it's going to cost this, he deserves to go. I'm very carefully crafting a letter to get a good response. And actually, we've put a copy of that letter in the book because, again, where do you start? People, some are really badly written and you've got to get through. And even with what I think is a good letter, because we did have some lovely responses that did praise us for that letter. And so I'm fairly confident that we put in the right content. But even then, it was more no's than yeses, nearly all no's, to be honest with you. And of course, now there are not going to be many people left with money to give. So many companies would have folded. So where to go and whether they're available is a nightmare. Yeah. So we did everything, we ended up sort of doing quizzes and things like that. All sorts of things. Yeah.
So it's really sort of where and when you can.
Yeah, it is. And again, I've got a bit of a controversial opinion, I think, on crowdfunding. I don't know, just doesn't go down very well. Doesn't go down. I mean, it can be brilliant and it can work. And as I mentioned in the book, we're not all Captain Tom Moore who raised all that fabulous money. So nearly every student puts up a page, and I mean, good luck to them. That's fantastic. But I came across some quite negative responses when my son went to drama school, and one of the questions was, why that one then, when it costs so much money, why doesn't he go somewhere else? I was like, but it's the best, or it's one of the best. Why shouldn't he go there if we can raise the money? So a few little funny comments along the way that you have to be careful of. And I think if you do go down the crowdfunding route, you're basically just asking people for money who perhaps have already supported you quite a lot along the way. And by that, I mean, they've bought tickets to come and see your concerts and your amateur dramatic productions and so on. And I think by giving money to crowdfunding, although that's fantastic, you're not giving anything back. Whereas if you can run a quiz or a raffle or something like that, it's kind of win-win. You've got a win-win situation going on. So it's only my opinion, but you know, I do mention there are a lot of win-win situations, rather, you know, the roads you can go down to that might be a little bit more suitable, perhaps. Yeah.
From a fundraising perspective, and in fact, I'd imagine looking at all of the options in front of you then, is there a point you feel where parents will sort of feel overwhelmed by this process, and how should they deal with that whilst not putting any pressure onto whoever is applying to drama school?
I know, that's a really good question. How? I mean, yes, there is a pressure there, because you're just thinking, well, okay, let's just say we've got the first few terms sorted. We could afford to send him for the first year. What about the second and the third? The only thing I would say is, if it is that much of a struggle, you've got to remember that they have got in. They've beaten 11,000 others, for example, to get one of those 30 places. They must be good. So you've got to hold on to that. And if they're that good, the school will normally come up with something. They're not going to let you go. They're not just going to say, oh, you can't afford it, bye. I found them to be quite supportive. And we did get a couple of bursaries along the way in year 2 and 3 that we didn't have in years 1, because he worked hard, he proved himself, and the support was returned. So that was nice. You know, I'm no rich millionaire. I didn't have the money. I was a single mum for most of the time, bringing up Alex. So I think I was just lucky in that, knowing that that's what he wanted to do from a young age. I had tried to save, and bless him, he put his whole amount of savings into it himself, stuff that he'd had from grandparents over the years, Easter, Christmas, birthdays or whatever. He chucked the whole lot back in. So to me, you know, I had to match him, I felt. But it was hard. Yeah, it was hard. It was stressful. Oh, it was worth it. It was worth it. It's great.
Oh,
I love it.
To hear.
Yeah, I love it. Oh God, I'm so proud. Yeah, it's amazing. Lovely.
Yeah, I suppose taking a step away from the author side then for a little bit, as a parent, having gone through all of that to get to the drama school and things, and for then your child to go to not only work as a professional actor, which, you know, you can work in many different roles and many different levels, and if that's the life you've chosen, that's fantastic, but to the West End.
I know.
What was what was that like for you? As I know there's a potential second book, depending on how long lockdown goes, I understand.
Yes, I failed at that so far. There's a long way to go yet.
Yeah,
but yeah, what
feeling of seeing them in the West End to have reached, certainly for a musical theatre, very much the pinnacle of what it is in British theatre.
It's the dream.
What was that like?
It's the dream. And in Alex's case, the first, he actually finished on, if I recall, I think it was a Wednesday when he actually kind of signed off and left drama school and was out on his own. And the Thursday he signed for Heathers the Musical. And that was just cry. My goodness, you should have seen me. What a mess. I was actually out with my partner in an Italian restaurant. We went out for something to eat and said, oh, you know, we've done it. We got through, you know, cheers to him, sort of thing. And let's hope something, you know, comes from this. And we got a phone call with the news. Could not believe it. Couldn't believe it. So yeah, it was emotional. And they started off at the other palace, so off West End. And then that was another phone call then, Mum, we're being transferred. And it was huge. Heathers was huge, and the following was enormous. It was like a rock concert going. I saw it about 6 times, and it was really good. So yeah, so it's just so exciting. And then just seeing his picture outside the, you know, they put all the posters up outside the theatre, and of course I had all the selfies, pointing at the posters, did all the mum stuff, had to. But his dream job, and I don't think he'll mind me saying this, is that when he went for his audition and got recalled and then had an interview, he was asked what he wanted from the school, and he just, not arrogantly but kind of confidently, I suppose, said, oh look, just get me into the Book of Mormon, because that was his dream show, always wanted to do it. And flipping out, the next job was the Book of Mormon. So literally he just said his, you know, his kind of 5-year or whatever year plan that he had suddenly all happened for him in his first couple of years. So the downside, of course, is that all the theatres are shut and he's not doing any of that. But, you know, yeah, hopefully he'll go back and sort of finish that contract and see where we go from there. But yeah, it was mad. He's been so, so lucky. But who knows what's around the corner? We don't know.
Yeah, well, I'll try not to delve into that too much before we get too sidetracked by the need for funding, please. Let us reopen. But to rewind then, before we were able to get to the West End, knew he was going to drama school. What sort of things was he doing acting wise? Was he going to classes? Was he doing his own performances? Is there something that you think parents should be looking to encourage their children to do if they know they want to apply?
Well, first of all, yes, he was doing the works. He belonged to a local theatre company, which, okay, did happen to be mine, but that was regardless. It was, you know, in the area, and all his friends were all there and everything. So yes, he was doing certainly annual musical theatre productions. I think he did things like Addams Family, for example. He played Fester. He was the Hatter in an Alice the musical, the Mad Hatter. So he had some, you know, some lovely roles to get his teeth into there. So he was able to test himself on that hunger, I think, and you know, and have that feedback from the audience and know that yes, this is what he wanted to do. But he also belonged to a local choir. He had private singing lessons. What else? I tell you what he didn't do. Limon didn't dance, and that was my background. That's one of the few things I could actually have helped him with. Oh no, he didn't do that. Even in his musical theatre classes in the theatre company, when we did dance, obviously he'd mess around terribly. He just didn't take the dancing seriously, and that's because it was my thing. That's all. It was you know, that's what mum does, I think. So yeah, that's the only sort of gap he had. Really, he can dance now. But yeah, even at his audition, you know, that was sort of the worst part of his audition for him, was the dance part. I was like, I told you so. Should have concentrated more. But yeah, basically get involved in everything, and if you can. I'm just trying to think now what else he did. You know, even coming up through school. I mean, you know, it doesn't have to be stuff that you pay for. Just get involved in the school productions. Just learn the ethos of being part of a team and, you know, a company. I think there's nothing so exciting as to getting to know, like taking school, for example, you're getting to know pupils that you would never normally befriend from all different year groups, and you see the other side of teachers and you see them getting involved and sometimes taking part, which is lovely. And you do create this kind of extracurricular family, if you like. And I think that's probably one of the first sort of tastes that you can have. So yeah, he did that. He went all through school with that, and then outside, and then choir and singing as well. And he taught himself to play the guitar. But I think, you know, if you can't do any of that, because he did want to be a pop singer at one point, and it was like, right, shall I go down the pop music route or the musical theatre route? So we had another conversation at that sort of juncture. But forget all of that. You know, you can do things like scour YouTube, watch musicals. If you can manage to go and see anything locally, get the programme, you know, see who's in it, see what they went on to do. And if you're lucky enough to see some West End shows, definitely keep the programmes. And I know, you know, every time he went, whether it's with the school or theatre company or whether we went privately, he's got stacks of them where he would just circle what schools, people, you know, who's getting the jobs, basically. So, you know, he did loads of research like that. So, but he loved it. That wasn't hard work. That was just being interested. And it just told me that he was really that keen, I think.
Yeah, that passion, I think, is something that's so key to knowing what you want to do.
That's all it is, isn't it, really, at the end of the day? Passion.
Well, before we finish up, I suppose I have two further questions before you. If you had the chance to go back to when you were at the start of it all with your book, what chapter would you show to your past self first? Say, this is the bit you need to check out first.
Like, I've got a copy by me, like a Blue Peter presenter. Here's one I prepared earlier. Oh my gosh, that's really good. Really good question. Do you know, it's a bit boring answer. It's probably got to be the financial chapter, I think, which includes things like you don't think that, you know, once they get in, they've got to find accommodation and somewhere to live. So as a student, you know, people don't want students in their house who can't, so you've got to end up being a guarantor for the house and things like that. So stuff like that I didn't know, that caused a bit of extra panic at the last minute. Well, you know what students are like. What if they do have a party and something goes wrong? We haven't got the money now to pay for that on top of school. And so just little heads up things that would have helped. How to apply for the student loans. I talk about, you know, you need codes and things like that for the drama schools. They don't all accept it. So I think just knowing all that in advance would have given me a little bit of a heads up. So yeah, I'm going to say the finance chapter, I think. I think. But you know what, my favourite chapter though is the whole audition section about what you have to get up to when you perhaps take them for these auditions. I know some people go on their own, but I did take him. So all the hanging around and the, you know, how many shops can you go in and out of, and how many hot chocolates can you drink, because you're there sometimes all day and then they might not get in and you might have to do it all over again. So yeah, that I like writing that chapter. But regards advice, yeah, funding, I think.
Straight to the appendix. Fair enough. And then I suppose that leaves us with a potential second book. And what's that going to be about? What's up the stream?
Well, I've been absolutely thrilled how this one has been received, because at the end of the day, I'm just a mum who wrote a book, you know. I'm no amazing author or anything, and I just wrote it from my own voice, and I sat down and just said, right, what was this experience like, and bashed it out on the keyboard and barely edited it really, because I just wanted it to be me talking to the mums who were sitting down with a glass of wine having a dip into the book, and hopefully that comes across. So I've forgotten the question now. The second book.
your next, what kind of thing are you?
So yeah, moving on from that, because it's been well received by the parents, I think the next chapter is all about life at drama school. So your children can be very reliant on you to get in, whether it be a lift to the audition or whether it be to pay for the audition or what have you. They're very reliant, but once they're in, quite rightly, they're now living their own independent lives, which is fantastic. So the phone calls home start to dip. And they've got, you know, as I say, they've got lives of their own, and that's so exciting. But you tend not to get all the information that perhaps you were getting before. So when they, you know, when you do hear that they're doing X, Y, Z, it means nothing. You know, it might mean nothing to you. So it's going to be sort of like an extended glossary of what happens in drama school, what all the types of lessons mean, and then there's going to be how it works. So, for example, as a mum, I was like, "But when you're going to be on stage? When can I come and see you?" It's like, right, nothing until the third year. Well, some parents wouldn't know that. When you're going to get an agent? What happens? When are you on spotlights? Blah 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 blah. So many questions. So it's going to be in another book, and it's basically going to guide the parent through drama school, so they don't have to rely on those phone calls, which get few and far between. And thank you for having me, Hector. It's been lovely.
It's been our pleasure, and we hope you'll be back one day with your new book.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that offer.
Fantastic stuff. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe to Voice for more information on youth, arts, culture, and news. I've been Hector from Voice. Until next time, goodbye.